Hi everyone, Virginia Kelly here, astrologer and holistic healer, reporting on this week historical Mars-Uranus conjunction on the US birthday. So the graph shows a biwheel with the US chart at the center because this happened on the US solar return and not just any birthday, the 250 years from Independence Day. This transit hits the collective in a historical way because Uranus in Gemini already has coincided with relevant periods in history, especially for the US, as a signature of liberation at the time of the Revolutionary War. But this transit happened during other times in history that coincided with the US Civil War and World War II, especially when the US got more involved. And as we say in South America, when the US sneezes, the world catches a cold. Because the US has been the main world potency since and has been behaving as an empire and holds monetary hegemony. And we have not seen a world where this is not the case yet. But power is shifting to the east with the BRIC countries, which are 20 plus countries with over 70% of the world resources. So a lot of the conflict that we're seeing today in the world boils down to that, to a resistance of letting go of that position because of the economical implications that will ripple through every sector of society, and we can already feel it with the price of gas that affects the price of everything that needs transportation, which is pretty much everything. And the conflict that interrupted the Strait of Hormuz was about disrupting supply to become an alternative to the world's energy demand. And I have to be careful of what I say here because in the past, my channel had more of a mundane slash geopolitical financial focus, and I said things that got me shadow banned for what I turned to help people instead. Anyway, this is too much of a relevant event for me not to cover it, especially for the people living in the US. Now, Uranus takes 84 years around the Sun and about 7 years per sign, but we have some key moments, one of them being the Mars-Uranus conjunction that happens on July 4, and when Uranus reaches 8 degrees like the US chart, but that will be next year. Mars-Uranus happens every couple of years, and Mars is the cosmic warrior that acts as a trigger to Uranus, the planet of shock. And this happens on the US 7th house of open enemies and allies, internal and external. Last time they met coincided with the first attempt against the president, but back then it was on the fixed star Algol at the end of Taurus, that is the star of losing the head. Now, in Gemini, this has more of a historical relevance, and this conjunctions happens at the bending of the nodes of fate, which points to reaching a crossroads that will change the course of history. Uranus strikes like lightning. It represents upheaval and disruptions that are unexpected and they carry a surprise factor. So by definition, it's unpredictable. So there's a lot of speculation based on past events, but we don't really know how it will strike. Uranus shakes things up, and even though it's no longer in Taurus, the fixed earth sign from a Western astrology perspective, from a sidereal Vedic perspective, it still is, and we've seen a lot of earthquakes lately. And seismologists are concerned that the stress along San Andreas and Jacinto Falls, where they meet, it has reached its highest level in 1,000 years. Now, Uranus is like an antenna and is electric. It also coincided with the Carrington event, the most intense geomagnetic storm in 1859 during solar cycle 10 that created strong aurora displays and caused sparking and fire in telegraph stations. Gemini rules communications and the grids, so when they talk about the 3 days of darkness, it sounds a lot like a fall of the grid that could resolve in 3 days. But Uranus also rules tech and Gemini the internet, so this could relate with AI or quantum computing, hacks, or crypto. And Uranus archetype is that of the mad scientist, and in Gemini this could be news about recent experiments on mankind. And we know that Fauci and Gates are on the line, and there are some connections with Mr. Epstein too. Uranus also represents UFOs, and in Gemini representing communications, this could be about disclosure that is being soft launched with a Spielberg's movie, and at this point is overdue, But again, I would be skeptical on the delivery of such news with half-truth, fear-mongering, and hidden agendas. Now, even if we don't know exactly how this will manifest, we can see where the lines go through using astrocartography. So we can see the vertical Mars-Uranus dotted lines going through the west of the US and Canada. But the parents, which are the horizontal lines, show the Pluto-Browns line, the death rebirth planet, and the Chiron green lines, the wounded planet, crossing alongside California and Nevada. So this could be where something starts or where some news starts. Now, even if this doesn't sound positive, Uranus is ultimately about liberation and awakening. And by next week, Uranus is going to make an exact mini trine with the outer planets all at 4 degrees of air and fire signs. And that hasn't happened in recorded history, which is a very positive configuration of the ongoing mini trine that we've been having since last year and will extend into the next couple of years. And now, with benefic Jupiter, it forms a cradle, also known as a Barbault basket. Barbault was a French astrologer known for calling the pandemic, among other things, and specifically studied this configuration today. And he stated that it was a marker of major global restructuring, and he suggested that it was the beginning of the end. The beginning of the end of a long, chaotic cycle leading to a more constructive era. But he also expected major political challenges and deep shifts in leadership and a reality check that would take the population a while to shake out, from which rebuilding could be difficult while we're turning a corner for a better world, sort of a relaunch of civilization after going through the demolition of old structures in a sequence that goes from disruption, reckoning, and rebuild. So there are many stages to this process, some of which has started already with the great conjunction of Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter in 2020. And we've seen a conjunctional astrology since, so big conjunctions with social and outer planets shaping society and influencing generations. The latest was the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in February during eclipse season, which historically has coincided with falls of empires and changing of political systems. But as we're heading to the Jupiter-Pluto opposition, that is the culmination of the 2020 seeding, this is the harvest, the result of what started then. And historically, this has coincided with economical crisis. Yet we're entering a new phase in the cycle, and is part of this basket or cradle that will peak past mid-month, which is a divine signature for blessings and care of new and delicate things, like a baby. So this points to a turning point that needs to be handled with care as it ushers a new phase, a new life. Now on the 19th, the moon will join exact at 4 degree Libras, making this a double basket, a double cradle with 3 mini trines, 1 grand trine, and a mystic triangle. So if God is not behind this, I don't know what, because this is a display of sacred geometry and quite rare. Now, there are other aspects to consider for the US, and these are about 1 degree of separation adding to the intensity. A Saturn opposition, which is a time of reckoning with the karma of past actions and restructuring of the foundations of society. Transiting Saturn squares the US Sun, but transiting Sun squares the US Saturn, so these are obstacles and restrictions mounting on top of each other. A Mars semi-square to the US Chiron, so this could be some kind of attack. A Mercury retrograde conjunct US Mercury retrograde in the 8th house of taboo and secrets, representing documents and files, and the 8th house representing the rich, powerful, and sexual scandals. So more about the files. And Neptune, the planet of deception, in the 5th house of gambling, squaring the midpoint of the US benefics, Venus and Jupiter representing wealth, in the 8th house of shared resources, debt, taxes, affecting the financial system. And transiting Pluto, the demolition planet, in an inconjunction with the US benefics, possibly resetting the financial system too. Now Chiron, the wounded healer in the sixth house of routine and daily lives, is in an inconjunction, so at odds with the US midheaven representing the government, so also a possible attack. And the Sun, representing authority, squares the US moon, representing the population, for what the ruling class and the people are at odds, but we are more. And Uranus is the planet of rebellion, revolutions, aka re-evolutions. And that's the reason for the divide, for divide and conquering. They fear us uniting and owning our power. So stop fighting about politics because they're the same eat, different stink. Now, after all this, the biggest surprise would be to have a nothing burger event. So I pray for that. Anyway, this is more for the collective than for you personally, unless it affects your chart directly. So if you have any major placements like your sun, moon, or rising, and with this one I feel pretty much any placement like the nodes, the malefics, the outer planets, or even Jupiter magnifying things within the first decan of the mutable signs, and that's Gemini, Sagittarius, Virgo, and Pisces, or the last degrees, especially the 29 anaretic degree of the fixed signs, that's Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, this can affect you. Especially for Gemini, because this can affect you directly, while for Sagittarius, this will affect others, like significant others and partnerships. For Virgo, this can affect your career and public life, and for Pisces, this can affect your home and family life. This will be easier for the other air signs like Aquarius and Libra. For Aquas, this will fall in your creative projects, romance, and children's sectors, and for Libra, in your areas of foreign matters, higher education, publishing, teaching, and overall expansion. For Cancers, this will fall in your 12th house of mental health, rest and recuperation, institutions, and spirituality. And for Leo, this will fall in your community sector, friends, networks, basically your tribe. For Scorpio, this will fall in your area of shared resources and other people's money, including your spouses, inheritance, loans, and taxes. And for Capricorn, this will fall in your daily routine, service, and health area. Now, if you don't know your big three, your sun, moon, and rising, I made a free guide on how to cast your chart to find out, and the link is below. But where I can help you the most is with a personal reading or a healing or coaching session, so follow the links. And finally, if you're a healer or you want to study with me, I made a medical astrology certification course that is a two-part course, Foundations of Astrology and how to bridge that knowledge into a healing practice. And this is ideal for healers of all kinds and is on sale for a limited time, no code needed. And if you want to learn about how to use sound healing with planetary tuning forks, which are the cosmic octaves of the planets associated with the 7 chakras, download my instructional guide, also on sale for a limited time. Again, no code needed, and all links are below. If this resonates with you, please subscribe for updates, and if you like, press the like. If you dislike, press the dislike, but please interact. This is a small token of appreciation for all the work and research I put into making these videos. Thank you so much for your time and listening. See you in the next one.